Who have ever been out here before on a tour with me? So a good chunk of you. So before we start really focusing in on artillery, I want to either remind you, or for those of you who this is the first time you visited, understand how we get here on this day 162 years ago, July 18th, 1864. So there was a difference of opinion among Confederate soldiers in Jubal Early's army on the night of July 12, 1864, as Early's army was withdrawing from the gates of Washington and heading back toward the Shenandoah Valley through Snicker's Gap. So there were some soldiers in Early's army who believed that if Early would have attacked through the defenses of Washington, that they could have captured the capital and that would have ended the war. There were some individuals in Early's army who believed that that was impossible, because while they might have been able to attack and break through those Union defenses, they didn't have any support behind them. And whatever they were able to capture, they would not have been able to hold on to. There were some soldiers in Early's army who believed that it was all a waste of energy, a waste of time, a waste of life, a waste of physical exertion, that it achieved absolutely nothing to march to the gates of Washington, D.C. Now, from the perspective of Jubal Early, he believed that it achieved a great deal. So very famously, as the Confederate Army is leaving Washington, Early had a conversation, supposedly, with one of the members of his staff, Henry Kidd Douglas. And he told Douglas, he said, "We haven't taken Washington, but we've scared Abe Lincoln like hell." And years ago, when I started researching and eventually writing my book on Cool Spring, which, by the way, is for sale in our gift shop after the tour, I was curious, how scared was Abraham Lincoln? And it is pretty clear that Lincoln felt a range of emotions in that second week of July, but fear was not one of them. He was aggravated, he was ticked, he was annoyed, but he was not fearful. Washington, D.C. was encircled by fortifications. There was heavy artillery in those fortifications. He knew that reinforcements from the Union 6th Corps and eventually the 19th Corps were on the way. So I don't think he ever really feared that Jubal Early would capture Washington. And so when Early's army withdraws, Abraham Lincoln wants one thing. He wants him pursued and he wants him destroyed. Now, the challenge for Lincoln is that there are multiple different armies operating in and around Washington, D.C. There is not one overall commander. And technically, the overall commander is Ulysses S. Grant, who is at City Point. So Abraham Lincoln knows that if there's going to be an effective pursuit, well, you have to have one commander responsible for these like 30,000 men. And so Abraham Lincoln made a promise to Ulysses S. Grant in March of 1864. And he said, "I will never interfere in your command. I will never overstep my bounds unless you do something like George McClellan, like you're just super slow and don't make any decisions." And so Lincoln and Grant were communicating furiously at this moment. And so Lincoln told Grant what was going on, and Grant decided to appoint Major General Horatio Wright, commander of the 6th Army Corps, to command this pursuit force of about 30 to 35,000 men. So as Early is leaving D.C., Horatio Wright is getting things organized. He will not pull out of D.C. until the following day. So Early gets about a 24-hour head start. Now, as Early's army is moving towards Snicker's Gap, and for those who aren't familiar, where Route 7 goes up into the mountain, that break, that's Snicker's Gap. So as Early's army is moving towards Snicker's Gap, there's all these different perspectives about what our advance to Washington achieved, and they're all over the place. Right? People very rarely have a singular reaction to anything in history. This is why perspective is important. But there is one thing that I think all Confederate soldiers agreed upon, that they were exhausted. You know, if you think about what Early's army had done since mid-June, so in about a month, they had marched, well over 650, 700 miles. They had moved from Petersburg to Lynchburg through the valley, up to Frederick, over toward Washington, D.C., and back. And if you think about the summer of 1864, I know it's humid out now, but this is actually a nice day. So there's a terrible drought in the valley in the summer of 1864, temperatures well above 100 degrees every single day. And these guys want rest. They are exhausted, but they're not going to get it because Abraham Lincoln once early pursued and he wants him destroyed. So the first moment where Early and the lead elements of Horatio Wright's force clash is at Castleman's Ferry. So essentially where the Shenandoah River is, crossed by the bridge over Route 7, that's the vicinity of Castleman's Ferry. There is fighting on that spot all throughout the day on July 17, 1864. You have cavalry commanded by General Alfred Dufay are making multiple attacks against troops from John B. Gordon's division. You have those cavalry are supported by men from Colonel James Mulligan's command. Throughout the day on the 17th, they're unable to drive the Confederates from Castleman's Ferry. On the morning of the 18th, they continue to try to do the same thing. And of course, as my wife oftentimes says, if you keep doing the same thing over and over and over and expecting different results, you're insane. Apparently must be my stubbornness come through. I don't know. But in any event, George Crook, when he gets to Snicker's Gap and he sees around 10 o'clock that morning a Union cavalry attack down the mountain toward Castleman's Ferry, George Crook realizes we have to find another way. There has to be another alternative. And so Crook, conferring with Wright, they come up with this scheme. And the scheme is this: to take one division commanded by Colonel Joseph Thoburn, so about 5,000 men, move them from Snicker's Gap about 1.5 miles north, bring them to this point right here. So that house that stands there was there during the war. It's called the Retreat. It was built in the late 1790s. During the time of the Civil War, it was owned by Judge Richard Parker, who was the same judge, of course, who presided over John Brown's trial in the autumn of 1859. And the 195 acres that we own now was part of an 1,100-acre plantation owned by Judge Parker. So the plan was to bring Thoburn's men to that point, come down that road that's just to my left of the house, Parker's Ford Road, bring them down here and cross the Shenandoah River right here at Island Ford. So, Richard, this is where your ancestor from the 170th Ohio is coming right through here and crossing. Now, there were all kinds of challenges and concerns that Horatio Wright, George Crook, and Colonel Thoburn had. Number one, how do we navigate those paths? How do we make certain we're coming down the right place? So the guy who is going to help them get to this point is John Kerrigan. So John Kerrigan is a local man. He was from Castleman's Ferry. He was originally born in New York, came here as a child with his parents. And he has an interesting story. When the Civil War broke out, he was in his mid-40s, and he enlisted in the Stonewall Brigade, 2nd Virginia Infantry. In March of 1862, he deserted from the 2nd Virginia Infantry. He went silent for about 1.5 years. He shows up in Maryland, enlists in the 3rd Maryland Potomac Home Brigade, a United States infantry regiment, serves as its chief musician, and he is actually part of that pursuit force. Now, I don't know if he volunteered his services or someone knew that he was in the ranks, but he is the one who serves as the guy to get them to this point. So that's challenge number one. Challenge number two is Horatio Wright, George Crook, and Thoburn, they want to have this crossing be uncontested. So they basically want to just walk across the river, turn south, and flank the Confederates, which is about 1.2 miles that direction, at Castleman's Ferry. So in order to distract the Confederate attention away from here, they are going to do things closer to Castleman's Ferry. And the guy who is going to play the critical role in creating that distraction is this guy right here, Lieutenant Julian Verplanck Weir. So Julian Weir commanded Battery L, 5th United States Artillery. All right, so this battery is equipped with ordnance rifles. And you all will have an opportunity later on this morning to talk with our artillery expert, who is here, artillery expert Civil War era, because I see Colonel Cook there, who is a legitimate real-life artillerist. And you'll have an opportunity to learn more about ordnance and artillery and how all of those things work. But what Weir was told to do was to just create this massive heavy artillery fire against the Confederates and whatever they had moving around the vicinity of Castleman's Ferry, to kind of give the illusion that they are preparing for an attack once more directly against that position. So Julian Weir, I think he revels in this moment. And he revels in this moment because for the past year of his life, he has been plagued by something. At the Battle of Gettysburg, Julian Weir commanded Battery C of the 5th U.S. Artillery, positioned along the Emmitsburg Road, kind of near the Cadore Farm on July 2nd, 1863. During the fighting at Gettysburg, Lieutenant Weir had 3 of his 6 guns captured. After those 3 guns were captured, he took his remaining 3 guns and he left the field without orders. And there were all kind of charges against him of cowardice. And so this is something that does not sit well with him, because he had been cited for gallantry at the Battle of Fredericksburg. He had been cited for gallantry during the Peninsula Campaign. And so Julian Weir is looking after the summer of 1863 for things that can redeem his reputation. Well, what happens at Cool Spring on the 18th, it redeems his reputation. Because he is firing with great effect, his battery is firing with great effect, just picking off, Confederate wagons and the like. This is what one newspaper correspondent who was with Weir's battery wrote. He said, Lieutenant Weir thought he could land a few shells among the wagons of the Confederates that were moving, and General Wright told him to try it. He did so and made some splendid shots, greatly hastening the speed of the wagons. So Weir's battery is distracting all throughout the early afternoon. So the crossing happens here about 3 p.m. All right, takes them about an hour to cross, and there are some Confederates on the opposite shoreline. About 100 guys commanded by Major Jesse Richardson come from 2 different Virginia regiments, the 42nd and 50th Virginia. So Weir's battery it provides a distraction. There's not a huge Confederate presence here. The problem, however, is that the firing between Colonel George Welles's brigade that secures the crossing and the return fire from the Confederates, that sounds the alarm to Jubal Early that something is going to happen. And so he starts rushing troops in this direction. Now, Julian Weir, he stays in that position till about 4:30, 5 o'clock. And we'll kind of pick up his battery story in a moment. But this is one of those moments in his military life that I can't stress enough is so important to him. Like people, think about the Battle of Cool Spring and they think, well, it's a small engagement, 13,000 guys, only about 1,000 casualties. I'm of course being a little bit sarcastic there. It doesn't hold the gravitas of Gettysburg or Fredericksburg or Chickamauga or whatever, but for various reasons, this battle is important to people on both sides. And so to Weir, it's important. Now, there is a sad postscript to Weir's life. As much as this battle kind of redeems his reputation a little bit, he is plagued throughout the remaining 2 decades of his life by what happened at Gettysburg. And so Julian Weir, on this day in 1886, killed himself. He shot himself in the chest. And the reason he did so, there are a couple of reasons we think he did this. The previous summer, he revisited Gettysburg. And he visited where his battery was. And people who knew him best, he was stationed at Fort Hamilton, New York at the time, basically said that when he came back, he was in a kind of a depressive state. His wife wrote about this. He also, over the course of the next year, was beginning to question, you know, am I a good father? Can I provide enough for my wife and my 4 kids? He also dealt with frequent bouts of bronchitis that just would not get better. And so July 18th, 1886, anniversary of this battle. I don't think he chose that date on purpose. I think it's just circumstance. But he got home, went up to his bedroom, and killed himself. He left no real note to his family. The only thing he wrote to his wife was make sure that the lawyer knows the signature on the will is mine. That was it. So there was no explanation, so we can only guess as to why he does what he does. But his story illustrates, you know, lingering effects of war. I mean, we don't know what PTSD is in 1860s or 1880s. We don't know what it is until Vietnam. But soldiers in all times and all wars, they suffer from this. And oftentimes they find themselves in these terrible, terrible, you know, they're plagued by it. They're demonized. They have these inner demons, and sometimes suicide, they see, is the only option. So as Thoburn crosses here, gets to the other side, he starts interrogating Confederates captured during the fighting. And what those Confederates are telling him is there are 2 divisions in the area, Gabriel Wharton and Robert Rhodes. And so Colonel Thoburn is a little bit concerned. He's over there, and the rest of Horatio Wright's pursuit force is near Snicker's Gap. So he sends a message to George Crook saying, I think I would like to withdraw my 5,000 men now back to this side of the river. George Crook says, no, we're not going to do that, but we'll change the plan a little bit. So instead of turning south, what I want you to do is to put your men in line. So he's going to have one line hugging the riverbank. He's going to have another line about 75 yards up from the river, and then he'll have a line of skirmishers beyond that. So as Thoburn is making those deployments, George Crook is up there in the mountain, and he's looking off in the distance. And he can see it's a bright sunny day. He can see the sun glinting off of musket barrels. And he can see them headed right toward Island Ford. And what he is looking at are those 2 divisions, Gabriel Wharton and Robert Rhodes. So he then goes to Horatio Wright and says, we need to withdraw Thoburn now. And Horatio Wright says, no, we're not going to do that. I'm going to send support. I'm going to send troops from the 6th Corps, General James Ricketts Division. And they are going to come, and they are going to cross, and they are going to support, and that is going to be sufficient. And we're going to win the day. Well, as we'll see in a moment, that is not going to happen. Questions?
I got one.
Yes.
When Weir was shot himself, was he still in the service as a soldier?
He was. Yep. He was a career officer. He's 48 years old when he died. He's actually buried at West Point Cemetery. Visited his grave last month.
Is it a little unusual that those 2 divisions, Fulton and Rhodes, could respond as quickly as they did, since this was all supposed to have been mostly secret, coming over the Blue Ridge behind us and crossing the Shenandoah? How could they have responded so quickly?
Yeah, it's a great question. So Jubal Early, he gets a bad rap for losing against Phil Sheridan, but Jubal Early actually had a pretty good military mind. And so he placed his divisions very methodically. And like Rhodes' division is only about a mile from here. Wharton is a little over a mile from here. So he was basically thinking, okay, if I'm attacked and they can't take Castleman's Ferry, which is a very difficult position, where else might be the weak points? So he anticipates Island Ford as one of those points. And so that's why they're able to get there so quickly.
Who did you say is the overall commander here, Wright or Crook?
Horatio Wright.
Okay, so it's not Crook.
No. Yeah. So Horatio Wright's overall, George Crook is part of that pursuit force, commanding David Hunter's contingent from the Army of the Kanawha, and then Thoburn. Thoburn is the one who really is boots on the ground. He's the federal officer doing the actual fighting. Horatio Wright screwing everything up. as we'll see here in a moment.
Is Wright's division entire corps here?
Yes. Yeah, entire 6th Corps.
Did Weir have any infantry support, or were they not needed here because of the strong position he had?
He does not have any infantry support at that point, but what will basically happen is once they're across Weir's battery and 3 other batteries that we'll talk about, they shift north, and then you're going to start getting infantry regiments from the 6th Corps that are going to support all of those batteries.
What's the depth of the river here at that time?
So the depth of the river in 1864, based on accounts, is knee, mid-thigh. It's a bad drought. But I will say this, and Richard knows the story because I reminded him, when the Federal Army is crossing here, the waters are calm, you think, hey, I could just walk across. There's a soldier in the 170th Ohio who gets his leg stuck. He gets his right leg stuck, and he's pulling it out. He has to have his buddies pull out. He ruptures his groin, gets an infection, and dies. So that's a solid reminder that Mother Nature has no allegiance.
Is the stone wall still on the other side parallel to the river?
There are scant remnants of it, both that wall, and then there's walls that run perpendicular. There are little traces of them,
Just
but not.
barely still
Yeah.
there. Is there a road along the river as well?
Yes.
How far from the bank is that wall roughly?
Oh, it's
I mean, it's right there.
yeah, it's right there, 20 feet, 30 feet. Any other questions? All right, so we're going to head up this way and talk about General Ricketts.